I installed a Ring camera after someone stole a package off my porch last winter. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood, and at first, it was just nice being able to check deliveries while I was at work. Most of the notifications were normal: delivery drivers, neighborhood cats, kids riding bikes. Then one Friday night, I got a motion alert at exactly 2:17 a.m. I assumed it was another stray cat, but when I opened the app, there was a man standing on my porch. He wasn't doing anything, he just stood there. His hands were in his hoodie pocket, and he was staring directly at my front door. Not at the camera, at the door itself. He stayed like that for almost 3 minutes before walking away without knocking. It creeped me out, but I figured maybe he had the wrong house. The next night, another notification came in. 2:16 a.m., same guy, same hoodie, same spot. Again, he didn't knock or ring the bell. He just stood there in complete silence before leaving. I showed the clips to my brother, and he told me to call the police if it happened again. On the third night, I stayed awake. Around 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Instead of checking the app immediately, I quietly walked to my living room and peeked through the blinds. No one was there. Confused, I looked at the Ring footage. The man was standing exactly where he'd been the last 2 nights. I slowly realized why I couldn't see him. The camera faces slightly to the right of my porch. From my window, that angle is completely hidden by a brick column. He was standing in the one place where I couldn't see him from inside. I called the police while watching the live feed. The dispatcher stayed on the line until officers arrived. By then, he was gone. The officers searched the neighborhood but didn't find anyone. They told me to keep my doors locked and call again if he returned. For the next week, nothing happened. I started convincing myself it had been some weird prank. Then one afternoon I got home from work and noticed muddy footprints leading around the side of my house. My Ring camera didn't cover that area. I checked the gate. It was unlocked. Nothing looked stolen, so I locked it and tried not to think about it. That night I added another camera facing the backyard. The first night it was installed, I woke up to 5 motion alerts. The backyard camera had recorded someone walking slowly along my fence. The person never looked toward the house. They walked directly to my bedroom window and stopped. For nearly 4 minutes they stood completely still. Then they walked away. The next morning, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The bushes beneath my bedroom window were flattened, almost like someone had been crouching there. I called the police again and gave them every clip I'd saved. A detective later told me they believed someone had been watching my routine to figure out when I was home alone. They increased patrols, and eventually the visits stopped. A few months later, I was replacing the batteries in my Ring camera when I noticed something scratched into the plastic on the side of it. It was so small I never would have seen it before. Just 2 words. Wrong camera. I never paid much attention to my Ring notifications until the day a package showed up that I never ordered. It was a plain brown box with no company logo, just my name and address written on a shipping label. I figured it was a delivery mistake, so I left it on the porch while I tried to figure out where it came from. That night, around 11:30, my phone buzzed. Motion detected at your front door. I opened the live view expecting to see someone stealing the package. Instead, there was a man standing at the edge of my porch. He wasn't reaching for the box. He wasn't looking at the house. He was staring straight into the camera. After about 30 seconds, he slowly shook his head, turned around, and walked away. I replayed the recording at least 5 times. It felt deliberate, like he wanted me to see him. The next morning, the package was still there. I finally opened it. Inside was nothing but newspaper stuffed around an empty cardboard box. No receipt. No note. Nothing. I assumed someone had mailed an empty package by mistake and threw everything away. 2 nights later, another notification woke me up. This time, the same man walked onto my porch carrying another box. He carefully set it beside my front door, looked directly into the camera again, and left. I didn't even bother opening the door. I called the non-emergency police line instead. An officer came by the next morning, but the package was gone. Someone had taken it before sunrise. The officer reviewed my Ring footage and asked if I recognized the man. I didn't. He suggested someone could be using my porch as a drop-off location, but that didn't explain why the packages were empty. A week passed without anything happening. Then my neighbor knocked on my door. She asked if I had been expecting visitors late at night. I told her no. She looked uncomfortable before saying she'd seen someone standing in my driveway around 2 a.m. 3 different nights. He wasn't trying to hide, she said. He was just watching your house. That was enough for me to buy another Ring camera facing the driveway. The very first night it recorded something strange. At 1:58 a.m., the same man walked into my driveway carrying another empty box. But instead of leaving it, he stopped halfway to my porch. He looked over his shoulder. Then another person walked into view. I had never seen the second man before. The first man handed him the box. The second man pointed toward my house, then toward the street, like they were discussing something. After a minute, they both walked away without leaving anything behind. I handed the footage to the police the next day. An officer called me later that afternoon. He asked me one question. "Has anyone you've never met ever asked to use your address?" I told him no. He explained that criminals sometimes test houses before using them for illegal package deliveries. If homeowners ignore mysterious deliveries, they may start sending stolen goods there, planning to retrieve them before anyone notices. The officers increased patrols, and I never saw the men again. About 6 months later, I moved to another neighborhood. While packing, I checked my mailbox one last time. There was a plain white envelope with no stamp. Inside was a single photo. It was a picture of my old front porch taken at night. Standing in the doorway was me. The photo had been taken from somewhere across the street. On the back, written in black marker, were 5 words. "You finally noticed us watching." I installed my Ring camera after someone tried my front door one night while I was asleep. The police couldn't do much because I didn't have any footage, so I bought a camera the very next day. For months, all it ever caught were deliveries, neighbors walking their dogs, and the occasional raccoon. Then, one Tuesday morning before work, I noticed something strange. At 3:11 a.m., the camera had recorded a man walking up my driveway. He wasn't wearing a mask or trying to hide his face. He walked straight to my front door, looked at the deadbolt for a few seconds, then walked away. I figured he had the wrong house. The next night, he came back. This time he stopped in front of the camera and looked directly into it. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind that made it seem like he knew something I didn't. After that, I started checking my cameras every morning. For 4 nights in a row, he returned. Sometimes he stood on the porch. Sometimes he walked around the driveway. Sometimes he disappeared into the side yard where the Ring couldn't see. The police reviewed the clips but said there wasn't enough evidence to charge him with anything since he never actually tried to enter the house. Still, they told me to stay alert. A few days later, I decided to install a cheap security camera inside my garage. I never told anyone about it, not even my family. It wasn't connected to my Ring system. It simply recorded whenever motion was detected. 3 nights later, my Ring sent another notification at 2:54 a.m. The man walked onto my porch like usual. But something was different. He wasn't alone. A second man stayed near the sidewalk, keeping watch. While I watched the live feed, the first man casually walked around the side of my house and disappeared. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. While waiting, I remembered the garage camera. I opened its app. At first, the garage looked empty. Then movement appeared near the back wall. Someone was inside. The first man had quietly opened the side garage door. He wasn't stealing anything. He was standing completely still, staring at the door that led from the garage into my house. Every few seconds, he'd glance at his phone as if he were waiting for a message. Then the second man entered the garage carrying a backpack. He unzipped it. Inside were zip ties, gloves, and a crowbar. My heart dropped. The dispatcher suddenly interrupted me. "Officers are pulling onto your street now." The man inside the garage looked toward the small window. Blue and red lights reflected across the glass. Both men took off running. Police searched the neighborhood for over an hour but never found them. The detective handling the case asked for copies of every recording. A week later, he called with an update. The 2 men were suspects in several attempted home invasions across nearby counties. In every case, they spent days watching homes before trying to break in. Mine was the first house where they were caught on an interior camera. Months passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Then one evening I received a motion alert from my Ring. No person appeared on the video. Just a small folded piece of paper sitting on my welcome mat. I waited until the police arrived before opening the front door. Inside the folded paper was a printed screenshot from my own garage camera. It showed the exact moment the first man looked toward the hidden camera. Someone had circled the lens in red marker. Underneath, a handwritten note read, "Next time, we'll find every camera first."